Nothing good or nothing bad has ever been created by humans without a manifesto. Think about that.
If you feel confident that you have the same goal, then things that make relationships tricky, such as ego, has no place.
One thing that people don't do enough of is to read sci-fi. You have these super intelligent beings, even sentient beings. There is more of everything. There is more hardware, there is more software, there is more everything.
The world is built on accountability, it's built on trust, it's built on managing risks between people and between companies, between governments, organizations, etc.
Welcome. I have my great friends from Superagent here today, Alan and Ismail.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, sirs. I wanted to start with something that is not your company, although your company is very, very cool, and we're going to get into that. But maybe the coolest thing with you is that you have known each other for a long time, and you have built companies for a very long time, and you still haven't killed each other. What is the secret?
Yeah, I think we might be onto something here, Ismail, that is worth more than the company, right?
It's the
I don't know, Ismail.
bromance. It's the bromance.
Yeah, would you like to give your take? I'm the one usually giving this explanation.
I think that, it's a mix of different things, personalities, interests. Both are interested in, technology, martial arts. We have very similar interests, similar friends, and also similar goals and visions, and that is a very strong thing, because that transcends, issues that you might have while you're running a company together. An example is, it's almost like telepathy, I don't have to tell him what I think. He already knows by how I work, by what I do. And we can go off on our separate paths, do separate things, but we will always be synced, So it's almost like a sci-fi movie in that sense. And I think you get that when you work together for a long time. That's a natural thing, a natural, effect of working together for a long time. But in general, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm pretty sure that it is a benefit, in building companies and in anything you do. I can go down the street here. If something happens, I know I can call Alan. It doesn't have to be, about the company per se.
And for how long has it been that way? Like how long time do you need to build this up?
Oh, I don't think you need long time. I think you need you can do it pretty quickly. I think you just need to, be at the same wavelength and have, as I said, similar interests, similar networks, similar, friendships and backgrounds and cultures and, how we see things, how we act, how we do things. We are known in our town for being hard to play with, people think that we are, as they say in Swedish, hard.
That's the like a low bar, considering we're in Sweden, where everyone is super easy to play with.
Exactly. So I don't think it's a time thing. I think it's more other softer things than time, right?
I see. Alan, do you agree with you, Ismail, you listed similarities? One would maybe think that some differences could like complement each other or something like that. Is it mainly similarities or also differences that could help here?
Yeah, so I don't think our personalities are that similar. I would say that they are compatible. I wouldn't describe the personalities as similar. What is similar is the goals, right? And that makes it, and I think that's what Ismail alluded to, that makes it very easy to work together, because if you feel confident that you have the same goal, then things that make relationships tricky, such as ego, has no place. If you don't have a clear goal, if you don't share that goal, it's very easy for each individual to start optimizing towards other goals. personal goals, right? My ego, my brand, my career, my whatever it might be, right? And that when you start going down that path, I think that's a recipe for co-founder breakups and the likes.
Was it always like this, or did you like see warning signs along the way and decided to, no, we really need to make sure that we're aligned?
I'm not sure. I think it's been pretty smooth. I think we were lucky to be obsessed, both of us, independently of each other. So I guess there's a bit of luck. I wouldn't say we've worked super hard on our relationship, Ismail. I think if I were to meet another co-founder, I might have to do a lot of like hard work, that, bitter lessons, if you will, right?
But I think you see it in the batch as well. We have a specific type of culture, me and Alan, and that culture,
for sure.
It's easily...
That's why I knew who I wanted to call when I decided to start a podcast.
Yeah, it's easily spread. Yeah,
it
spreads easily. We're good at finding the right emojis to have to build a group, and I think that is due to our own, like, our communication, how we work together. I think people want to be included. Usually when they see a strong bond, people want to join in, and I think it's super important. It's probably the most important thing, and I think YC also emphasizes that. And you yourself, you know this better than anyone, right? So I think it's important.
Yeah. So you said that you didn't really have any like practical things that you did to work on the relationship. So you haven't done, like, YC advocates for like doing founder syncs regularly, stuff like this. You just do it naturally and it works out.
I don't even know what YC founder sync is. Never.
Okay,
This is the first time I hear
me
of
enough.
it. Yeah.
That helps me enough.
But sounds like a good thing.
All right,
yeah, no,
okay.
we sync regularly though. It's not like
Yeah.
we go off and do, but it's a different type of sync. We don't sync on feelings and stuff like that. We sync on what are we going to achieve, where are we now, what's the plan, and then we go off, execute, and then we sync again. So I think, yeah.
Are you good at
how it
having
is.
like tough conversations with each other, or are you just like lucky enough to not having to have them?
We had a tough conversation not long ago, which I found was very constructive. It was tough because we had to like face our own decisions, our own path, but I found it to be productive. I'm not gonna say I enjoyed it, but now in hindsight, I'm happy we did. So, yeah.
I don't think enjoying it is the point. So, but
Exactly.
yeah. if you do enjoy it, it's probably something maybe a bit wrong with you. But
Yeah, and
so
this
I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, and this space we are operating in, like, we are old enough to have built like a traditional SaaS company before. It's much, I'm not going to say it's easier. It is easier, but it's not the point. The point is it's less dramatic. Like, the landscape is much less dynamic. So it's much more predictable, right? Your stack is not changing overnight. The capabilities of your partners or whatever underlying technology you use doesn't 10x overnight, right? The competitive landscape is much more static, etc., etc. But now we are in this crazy, LLM AI arms race, which, makes it much more difficult. And I think that's why this conversation came up that we had.
Yeah. So maybe to paint the picture, what does Superagent do? What is the new thing that is not SaaS that you do?
Yeah. So Superagent is a workspace for AI agents. It's like Trello, but agents and humans collaborate on tasks.
Good. I see you memorized the optimized sentence to explain
It's a
it.
two-sentence. It's a
Two-sentence
two-sentence
pitch. It's
description.
always
I
there,
want
Yep.
to
right?
make it
Yep.
easy for the listeners. I could go on, but that's basically the gist of it.
Yeah.
We envision a future where, AI agents solve, much more complicated problems than they do today. And in order to do that, they need to collaborate with each other, but also with the humans. And we believe that, there's, technology that needs to be built to enable that future.
Right. Yeah, this gets into the manifesto that you have on your website. It's very, very niche of you to have a manifesto. I like the spirit. I like the spirit. And you list 3 things that current paradigms of AI agents maybe don't do, and you think that they need to. So first, active learning is the first thing, that these agents need to be active learners. So one question when I read that was when you say learning, do you mean in context, just finding information, or is it actually that the LLMs themselves should learn continuously?
It's both, I would say. So one thing that we have learned just the last couple of years is that context matters a lot for these models, right? And we have this whole prompt engineering discipline that is growing. We have RAG, we have all of these different techniques. We believe that the future will look different. It's not going to look like it does today. Many of these techniques will be obsolete. However, these models will always need to be handed information of some sort. We like to think of it more like access management. It doesn't need to be like RAG. Access management has existed before AI. Human beings do it all the time. So that's one of the things. What information can the model access? Secondly is memory, right? These models don't have memory. They don't have state. They need that, obviously, to be able to perform. And thirdly, over time, they need to learn things about the problems they are solving and about the environment they are in. So, for example, if I'm an AI agent at a specific company, over time, I need to perform better in the context of that company, right? I need to adapt more than anything. And but we want to do that without actually going in and embedding human knowledge, which is a topic that you've been vocal on.
Yeah, this is kind of like an echo chamber podcast where we all agree on everything.
Yeah, we agree a lot, but I don't think we agree fully. So I think there will be room for an interesting conversation, nevertheless.
There will. I was curious, Ismail. These points, this hypothesis that you have about this, it's not true for sure, but it's a strong hypothesis. What did you do to get this hypothesis? Why do you believe this?
I think that every founder that are building in our space, they go, from what I've seen and from what I've seen from our batch and founders outside of YC, it seems like we all go through the same, the same paths, basically. It starts off with us building, everyone building some kind of RAG chat, which was basically what everybody did. Then it's transformed.
I'm guilty as well.
Guilty as charged. Then it went on to become some kind of, instead of doing it in a chat, you wanted to do it in a table. Everybody had these table UIs that were populating itself. You had agents. Every cell was its own agent. That was one thing. And then we started seeing simultaneously, people trying to build workflows, connecting one agent in a deterministic manner, basically connecting, hard coding the agents to do specific things over and over again. RPA-like, an RPA-like approach to building agents, which we also were guilty of, and were one of the first to actually, pitch to users. That was what the Superagent, framework, the open source framework, actually did. Was exactly that, to build these, deterministic or hard-coded workflows. What ended up happening was that we got our first customer, our first enterprise pilot, and we started noticing that they have a lot of open-ended tasks. And these open-ended tasks take a lot of time, which requires them to hire a lot of people. But they cannot be solved through, hard-coded workflows. That type of it's a completely different type of domain we are talking about. And so that was the original, insight that we got, was actually from that user, that customer, that we need to build something where we leverage the intrinsic strengths of these models in reasoning specifically, in order to solve these open-ended tasks, in order to build a product that the user can actually use and can actually, fulfill I'm not sure how to phrase this, but fulfill the vision that these AI labs actually have, right? The point was not to build RPA-like workflows with LLMs, because in fact, it's better to actually not build them with LLMs in some cases. If you really want to have 100%, accuracy in input-output without any fluctuations, it's probably better to not use an LLM, I would say. And that is, I think that is something that everybody in that space will eventually learn as well. We did it. We had the chance of having a user that had these kind of tasks that enabled us to think more deeply around what type of product we should build and how we can leverage agents or language models or any other type of model that might appear in the future to actually be successful. So it was from a user perspective, I would say, where we gained the initial insight.
Right. Are
I
they
can
good
also
enough?
add,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, Lucas, I can also add, like, we were really advocating for these kind of workflow type of agents. We were advocating for designing them very narrowly and giving each agent a very narrow, specific scope. And we saw that as, best practice, and we were preaching that. However, it always felt wrong. Whenever you would engineer one of these agents, what you were actually doing was that you were stripping away their capabilities, which doesn't make much sense at all. So we had a bad hunch to begin with, and that only grew. And in the end, we came to the conclusion that this is probably not the way to go, despite us getting a lot of advice. So, for example, if you listen to the YC advice today, a lot of it is around vertical workflows and vertical agents.
Yes.
And I'm sure, we haven't talked about this, but that's something very interesting. We were in the middle of that whole whirlwind. And I guess there are good reasons for that, and we got caught up in that. But I'm now confident that that's not the way to go.
Yeah. But are they in the short term? Because I'm also confident in the long term that that's not the way to go. But in the short term, it feels like it feels counterintuitive to me that you got this insight from a customer insight. Because what I thought was that, like, what customers require right now are constrained workflows, because that is what is working right now. But like down the line, they will be replaced by more horizontal general solutions.
Yeah, I think we were lucky that this customer came with a smorgasbord of ad hoc tasks, right? And when we were in the beginning looking at these tasks, they didn't make much sense at all because they were very different from each other. And we were sweating, we had to design different workflows for each one of them. In the end, we just took a step back, looked at them, and was like, okay, if you have a reasonably smart agent with a good model, it could perform all of these. Because they are not if I look at it as a human being and I look at these tasks, they are not different. Right? It's the same crap, right?
Yep.
It's manipulating whatever files in some folder, right? So I think that's where the insight came from. And then, you were alluding to the whole notion of, short-term, long-term. Okay. 1 year ago, I shared that sentiment. Now, not so much, because what is the long-term really, right? The long-term now seems much more short-term than 1 year ago, which also is, talking about the conversation Ismail and I had, is like a painful realization that you need to have, that things are probably moving faster than we anticipated.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like there's two camps. Some say that we're moving faster than anticipating, and some say that, GPT-5 failed and Claude 3.5 was promised and it never was released, and model stagnation, yada yada. But then you hear people that are building with it, like you, say that, no, it's actually faster. And I think most people at the labs also say that, it's improving faster than they think. Why do you think it's faster?
It all depends on what kind of expectations you come in with. So we started playing around with GPT-3 in OpenAI's Playground. So this was long before ChatGPT was released. Using that, the experience I got that was never that we're going to have a PhD level agent doing, economically valuable work. That was not my initial experience. My initial experience was, honestly, I can generate ad captions, taglines, stuff like that. It's cool, something cool. So my expectations perhaps wasn't that low. That has a lot to do with it, perhaps.
I think also you could look at it like this. Given that that the trajectory is, it's increasing, our velocity to reaching, AGI or whatever you want to call it is, the velocity is increasing. And it might be that you could, if you would take a computer and you would put it, in the hands of a Stone Age person, they would be able to press the buttons. They would be able to type, but they wouldn't be able to extract, the huge amount of value that you can extract from computers immediately. It would take them time. And I think that you see that here. What you see is that the labs, the people that are working with these models that have the deepest understanding about how to use them, they get extreme value out of that. And then you have the low end of individuals that perhaps only know how to do a single shot prompt into it. And they most probably won't see the acceleration in the same sense. So it depends on who's using it. It depends on how well versed you are in using it. And I think that is, and also it depends in which context you're using it. So it all depends. But from my standpoint, I see a velocity, but I'm not sure, because in my point of view, it's already smarter than a human being at certain things. And so I'm not sure where, the breaking point is, where it becomes super intelligent or whatever. It feels like it's super intelligent already. If you ask it to summarize a YouTube video, it's more super intelligent than 1,000 human beings. So, it depends on the task, it depends on the context, depends on the domain and who's using it.
Lucas, question for you. If we were to pause the development of models today, do you feel like they are good enough for us to extract like economically valuable work at scale using only those models?
Like, it depends on what you mean at scale. I think, yes, obviously there's much more to do. And similar to what Ismail said, like, I think it's like we're Stone Age people given models that we don't know how to handle. I think that is true. I think though that the model development is like faster than the rate at which you can like make the current models usable. But like, yeah, if they do pause, I think there's a lot of like low-hanging fruits, and then past low-hanging fruits, a lot of value to extract. Yeah. And I think like that is obvious, judging from like startups at the moment are growing much faster than startups did like just a couple of years ago. I went to the YC Alumni Day for fall 24, and the revenue numbers were better than the ones that we had in our batch, for sure. So and PG also made like a tweet about this, that it seems like every generation of startups move faster. And I think that's because there's so much more value to extract from them at the moment. Because what most people are doing are extracting value from the current models. That is basically more than half of the companies in YC at the moment. So yes, I do think so. But yeah, extracting value now and like making sure that you're optimizing for the most value long term is obviously not the same thing. And I think that's maybe why you're making the bet on no model stagnation.
Exactly. That's where because we share that view. Looking at your article, we shared that view. We don't want to get crushed by the model. Every time a new model comes, we want to celebrate. That's kind of the if I want to like portray the feeling from an emotional point of view. Because, yeah, like I said before, it doesn't make sense to take a smart model, making it more stupid, basically, for it to perform a specific task, when you can just not do that and have it perform more tasks. Like, it makes sense, right? So we are trying to build for that future.
Another part of your manifesto states that agents should be collaborative partners. And when I read that, I wonder how that goes together with the things that we just discussed. Do they really? If they are really smart and can do things autonomously, wouldn't like communications with human just be a bottleneck?
It would be, yes, but if you are optimizing for efficiency, let's say, or speed, then yes, human beings are slow. We're bad at making decisions in groups. There are many flaws which we have, right? But if we are, looking into a future where we have human beings and these agents living together, hopefully serving humanity, right? Because we represent humanity at some level, then human beings need to be a part of that process, right? So we are optimizing for other things other than efficiency. We're optimizing for, among other things, safety, right? We're optimizing for compliance. We're optimizing for our requirements being met, etc. The opposite scenario, trust, exactly. The opposite scenario of this, if we are optimizing for efficiency, would basically be Skynet, right?
I'm too young to. What is Skynet? Or
Skynet from Terminator movies.
I'm not a movie fan. I have a
You're
controversial opinion here. No.
Okay.
Movies are too short.
Okay.
There's no good movies. That's my controversial opinion.
There are no good new movies. I'm gonna show you Terminator 2 one day. It's the best movie.
Everyone keeps telling me there's good movies. Look at this one, and then I watch it, and it's not.
But it's an AI movie.
Good.
So it's an AI movie. So essentially, Skynet they built.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, it's so for your audience, perhaps because you're not a movie buff, perhaps your audience is not either, right? So basically, they built an AI model. It's super smart. It's AGI or whatever, However, it optimizes for efficiency. So it keeps the humans out of the loop. And in the end, it optimizes for its own goals because it views humans as, inefficient in the way we don't need them. So in the end, they want to start
Also,
exterminating human beings. So that's not a
yeah.
good thing.
Also, I'm not sure that, AI is, I'm not sure where the actual, if the actual value is in executing tasks. The execution of a task is just one part of the actual task. The other part is reasoning around what to execute. I think that is much more powerful. Like, let's say, like you were trying to build a company, right? Let's say there was this superhuman AI thing that you could just prompt it, like, I'm going to build a company in and I want it to be with, AI safety. That's the company, right? And it would just reason its way through exactly each step you need to take in order to build a $1 billion company by yourself. That's more valuable. Those steps are more valuable than the actual execution of the step. And I think that part requires a lot of human in the loop, so to speak, because there are details that you would want to give it. There are nuances to the startup that you want to build that you need to share and collaborate with. But the actual execution, the pressing of the button, the writing of the email, the calling the person is trivial. It's trivial. For me, it's a trivial thing. That can already be done by an AI, and it's already done by AI. 70% of the internet is basically AI. So executing and posting and calling, that's a green check mark on that. It's the reasoning part that's interesting. And the question then becomes, do you need collaboration around reasoning with AI? And I would say that no matter how powerful it gets, you would always want to have some kind of collaboration with it. If the point is not to replace human beings, like across the board, just replace them with machines, then we don't need that. But if the point is to enhance human beings, well, then in my opinion, you would need collaboration.
Do you say, like, when you say reasoning, like that part is much more valuable than the execution part? What do you feel like the role of startups is in that? Because it feels kind of from like the surface level, it feels like the labs are building the reasoning thing, like the heavy duty models, and then maybe the execution part, startups could do that, or not even if like computer use stuff comes. But anyway, like in that scenario that you're talking about, like what do you feel the role of startups is?
I would say that it's not enough to build just a brain. Okay. If you think about it, like this is how we talked about it when we had our tough conversation, so to speak. We basically, what we thought was that you could describe it as a cell. A cell also has a brain, but in order to function and in order to be effective, it needs a bunch of other stuff. It needs a membrane, it needs to be able to replicate, it needs to be able to self-destruct, it needs to be able to collaborate, it needs to do a lot of different things. And that's the way I view AI as well. So even though you might have the biggest brain in the world, that will not be enough. And I think that startups can think about it. If you think about it from a first principles, perspective, you could start working on stuff that is the membrane or the protein or whatever, whatever attribute of this cell that you want to build out, where the better the brain gets, the better your, plug into the brain also gets. I think if you have that mindset, and if you can work and if you can, distill what would be the building blocks of that cell, that is valuable in the future.
Do you see people doing that?
Currently, yeah, I see some people doing it. I see, like, if you take like people that are working on memory, I think they are doing it pretty well. They're working on memory. It's an important part. Alan mentioned that earlier. I think that's important. I also think that people that are working on, real-time adjusting weights of these large models is also interesting. I think that goes back to, the model being able to learn new domains. That's also interesting. OpenAI did a lot of work there with their new fine-tuning stuff, but there are other people doing that as well. And you see a bunch of people working on efficiently training smaller models to do test time compute, DeepSeek, and all of these other startups as well. I think that's super interesting, how to optimize that whole pipeline, What I don't find interesting is, what I believe will die out is frameworks. I don't believe in any type of framework at all, not even ours, even though we were framework developers ourselves. I don't believe in that future, and that has a historical, proof as well. Frameworks just aren't built like that. That's the way it is. Specifically, if you're targeting developers. I don't believe in specific workflows. If you're building a workflow type of orchestration layer on top, I think that you will hit some kind of maximum level where it just doesn't do what you want it to do, because it's not meant to do that type of task. So those are a couple of things that I think we will not see that much in the future.
All right. You also have another blog post on O1 or like O3, and that the cost could increase a lot. We saw some evidence that it might even go up to like $2,000 per task that it did. How does this change this landscape?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of different theories regarding the cost landscape, right, of these models. But there's been like a silent consensus on everything just getting cheaper and cheaper. And I think that's a very simplistic way of looking at the future, because if you look at any good, for example, if you look at the automobile, obviously it gets cheaper and cheaper over time. It gets more accessible to a wider audience because of the advancements in engineering, material science, etc. However, there are always going to be other segments. For example, you have off-road, you might have the luxury segment, etc., where the prices, on the contrary, have gone up, right? So what I was, exploring in that post is like, what if we have a future that is similar to the automobile future? What if you had different models for different problems, right? And where you could have a general model, similar to the 4.0 model that is, good enough for most things. We believe that those type of models would be completely commoditized, would be almost, that the price of running them will converge to the cost of the compute or rather the energy cost, right? However, there might be a specialized model, for example, I don't know, CodeGen, or I saw a new foundation model now. They raised money for psychology. I don't know. There might be a very specialized one that is like, this is the best psychology model in the world. There's no reason for that specific model to be cheap, right? Then it's going to be, they can command whatever price the market is willing to pay. So that's kind of our current view of this. Do you agree on that, Lucas?
It depends on like how accessible the data is. I do agree if they do find some data that they can fine tune their model on that is super exclusive and it's very, very required to operate in the domain that it's trying to operate. However, I think those scenarios are very scarce, and just like generally fine-tuning your model on some specific domain where the data is kind of available, maybe not like available on the internet, but it's fairly easy to get access of it. I think like so far we have seen the evidence that is not really valuable, because it seems like when there was this paradigm where you had 4.0, but you couldn't fine-tune 4.0. This was like a couple months ago. But you could fine-tune 3.5, and I think like no one fine-tuned 3.5, because even if they did on their like very specific data, the base 4.0 was just like better. So, and I don't see why this would change if it's not that like this data is super exclusive and it's like it's not even close to any other data that the base model has been trained on.
Yeah, I can agree on that. In the psychology example, they must have like anonymized patient data or whatever, some data that is not in the public data set, I'm guessing, right? So in that case, the cost of that model converges to the cost of that data set, because that has a price, right? Perhaps.
Yeah.
But in that case, and that seems plausible what you're saying, in that case, how is like these big labs expected to return their investment, right? All of these billions of dollars we're seeing. What is their plan?
Yeah, interesting. But I think there's a likely scenario that they are not the winners. Like they will build the future. They will be the ones that make it utopia on Earth, but they will not benefit from it. It will be like the end users. There's like so much competition between the different labs, so the prices drop, but the capabilities keep improving. The way I see that they could capture all of this is if one model, like if you start to have some kind of like self-improving mechanism where like the model can create training data for itself and then improve, then you can have one model just like being much better than all the other ones. And if you have a monopoly like that, I think they could start basically taking all of the market by building all the software that needed to be done. Like you can OpenAI. I'm not saying this is likely. The first scenario is more likely, but like OpenAI, if they had the access to AGI and no one else had, they could just hire a bunch of consultancy or like a bunch of people to act as their consultants, and then they would be like the consultants with AGI access. And like, who do you want to build your thing? Yeah, I take the guy who has access to AGI, and they could just like capture like maybe all of software on the internet. Maybe not super likely, but I think this could be true if you have some kind of runaway effect with the models or some regulation where you're not allowed for safety reasons to have an API endpoint exposed, or like you have to take a responsibility for what other people do with your API. And then they might start to build products instead, because it's like more safe.
That is probably the biggest. So open source would be the biggest hurdle for these prices to keep increasing, I would say. So open source is the power that drives the prices down at this point. And also the competition with non-open source players. But I think that will die out. I don't think you will have 100 labs competing. I think you will have 2, 3, 4 labs competing in the end. But open source, I think, is very valuable in that sense. And I also believe that the only thing that could really create monopolies is the government. It's not really... it is regulation, it is regulatory capture of this market and that kind of thing. So if you get big enough, You can pay money and, you know, get your way in whatever government you want to. So I think that's a huge risk, of course, but that has other negative implications. But that is a risk. And that could increase prices a lot.
Why wouldn't 3 or 4 labs be enough to drive down the prices? They still have competition amongst each other, right?
Yeah, but they could, yeah, it will drive down prices. I'm sure, but it could also become a monopoly, which is like the opposite of driving down prices. I think you have a good example in the medical industry, where you have high regulation, high costs, and a lot of lawyers and a lot of other people, you know, driving up cost of a medicine that costs nothing to produce, you know. And so I think there are businesses where this has happened and is happening, and there's no physical law that says that AI couldn't be exactly like the, you know, medtech industry, or not medtech, but what do you call it? Like, yeah, medicines basically. So
Big pharma.
big pharma. There you go. I mean, you know, they do a bunch of stuff to keep prices up, and they have succeeded so far. So, and it could be a regional thing. It could be that we in the West or we in the EU that have, you know, a lot of regulations, we get to pay a higher price due to that regulation. And then other people, because they have to do a bunch of stuff, perhaps they need to tweak the model. Perhaps they need to put guardrails around the model. Perhaps they need to switch data centers. Well, I don't know. You
Right.
know, could induce a bunch of costs.
And Lucas, your main thesis, after having spoken to you, is that
Do I have a main thesis? I didn't know that.
This
But
is
okay.
my interpretation.
Let's hear it.
Perhaps this is an extreme interpretation, but you have a thesis where you're saying that, you know, a strong enough model, being able to use a computer and access standard company software, will basically rule everything, making all of software obsolete, but also, yeah, knowledge workers, right?
I think so. All of software is not obsolete because these agents need to interact with software.
Yeah,
like
but they could write,
like
they could write that
theory,
software themselves.
they
yeah.
could write it themselves. But like in theory, I could write like an Excel spreadsheet app if I wanted to.
Yeah, but you're
I know
too
how
slow.
to code, but
Yeah, but you're too slow compared to the
Yeah, but
right?
Okay, sure, they are faster. They are not infinitely fast, and they are not super cheap. So I think there will be. So right now, using Claude computer use is expensive. Even if that was reliable, it would be too expensive. I think that will drop a lot, not only with model prices and like, I don't know, GPUs being cheaper and all of this, but also they will find ways so that you don't need to like input a high resolution image at each iteration, and it will be much cheaper. Anyway, it still won't be super cheap, and it would be faster and cheaper to just use Excel as it exists, if that is good enough. But yes, I think doing very like vertical software, that will be replaced, because the only value, or like maybe only is a strong word, but like the only value here will be like horizontal, traditional software that is horizontal, because then the agent could use that for many things. Because like per use value in the software will drop, because if that was too high, it could only like create it themselves. Like the value of, so saying this in a short sentence, the value of software will go to zero. So the barrier to creating your own software is much lower, and then you would only use the software where it's like it makes sense from an economic calculation. But yes, I do think so. Like Operator, OpenAI's competitor to Claude computer use, is rumored to be released very soon. Hopefully it's good, or I don't know, hopefully maybe. I am concerned about AI safety, but it's probably going to be very good. Not making any judgment. Claude computer use is slow. It's not super good, but it's a first step. And look at the other first steps that we did a couple of years ago, and look at them now. I just think that this is going to be plausible in a couple of years, and I don't see that you would need anything else when you have that, because it's like a replacement for a remote worker, and a remote worker can do most things.
Okay,
But
so
you
that is
still,
your so that is your main thesis then, that a model with a computer could replace not only most software but also knowledge workers.
I think you could need, yes. So answer is yes. I think you could need something that's similar to what you're explaining, just like like the way you onboard an employee is that you give it a computer, you give it like access to data, information, account, password, stuff like this. And I think the onboarding process will be similar. You have some like Docker container with all of this information, and then it's just like, go and start and do your thing. But yeah, that's similar to the workspace thing, I guess, that you have to some extent, parts of it at least.
yeah, that's the more that was partly what I was referring to when I was talking about the cell, giving the model the attributes, the brain, the attributes it needs to actually go off and do things. And I think
Yeah.
that's where the value will be in the future for startups. I
Yeah.
don't think like it's specific applications. I find it very hard to imagine that you will have hundreds of different or even specific type of employees, like a AI sales rep. I find it hard to see a future 5 years where you would have those, and then you would have some other AI something else, marketer or whatever, So I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that is where we're headed, and I think it will go fast. I think price, speed, all of that stuff is just a matter of time before they nail that part. And computer use, of course, why not? Perhaps the next big startup is a computer that's an OS that is built only for agents. That has all of the tips and tricks for an agent to be efficient in that environment. Why not?
I think we're kind of agreeing. The thing that I would maybe disagree with is that, from my perspective, the effort of setting up this environment where the agent is operating, the effort is very small. And if that effort is very small, there's no value to build that, basically. So like 99.9% of the value is the brain, and the rest is very simple to set up. It's just like, here's a Docker container with pre-installed software and some accounts, and that's it. And you wouldn't build $1 billion startup from providing that.
So what would be needed in a world where the model could use a computer and be better than humans at operating it? What do you see?
We need energy. Like energy need is going to go up. Like, I don't know, build nuclear reactors. We need more chips. We need power infrastructure. We need a bunch of stuff like that, for sure. I think we need better like AI safety research, so that we know that these models do what they want to do, or that we want them to do, and not what they want to do. Yeah, I think those are like the main things that that I think is on my mind, at least.
But
what do you think?
Yeah, the thing is, I agree with all of that. The thing is, I cannot see a future where we invent this, let's call it AGI. I know we're tired of that word, but it's the word. Let's use it. And you give it a computer, and it is able to do what you are describing. I have a difficulty seeing that we will be okay with just feeding it with energy and, having it perform tasks for us.
Because of lack of trust, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of lack of trust, lack of control, need for regulation, etc., etc. AI safety, which you are working on, is a huge part of that. I do believe that we as humans simply won't replace ourselves with this new technology. I do believe that we will work side by side with it. And for that to happen, we need new technology. We need new tools. And how that's going to look, I'm not sure. We're just, we're just scratching the surface here. But I think something is needed. We cannot simply, if I take your thesis to the extreme, I would enter into a defeatist mindset where, the models are just getting better. Give it the computer. We're finished here. I have no value to add, right? That would be taking it to the extreme. And that's a bit sad, I think, and a bit unrealistic.
Like I think there's several other problems to solve. Like I said, you don't need to build AI verticals. This wasn't a thing a couple of years ago, and it's not super sad that goes away. I think like working on infrastructure engineering problems, there will still be like traditional software to be had because the agents need to interact with that. So software engineering will to some extent, the
but to
agents
what
could
extent?
probably
This
do
is
that.
the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
yes,
the thing.
the value of software will go down. I agree, and that's sad if you're a software engineer. I agree. But yeah, there's not a lack of problems to solve in the world, and these software engineers, they could work on AI safety research or stuff like that. It's not that doing AI apps is the only thing that you can do in this world.
Yep.
I don't agree with the value of software going down. I think the value of software will only increase. I think the value of writing code as a human perhaps might go down. But the value
I guess
of software
that's what we're talking about. Yeah, of course,
yeah.
we will get a lot of
Yeah.
value from software still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also
That is right.
and also, I think it's one thing that people don't do enough of is to read sci-fi. I think that when you read sci-fi, and specifically when you read AI sci-fi, and you get all of these futuristic, things, and some of them actually come true, which is weird, that people foresee how the world will change and there are several writers that do that, right? One thing that is in common is that there is more of everything in that world. There is never less of anything. It's not a minimalistic world. Even though you have these super intelligent beings, even sentient beings that are computers, there is more of everything. There is more hardware, there is more software, there is more everything. That is interesting. But I think that humans, I think that a lot of where we come from is like we look in the future. What happened when, the industrialization happened? Yeah, there was less of this, less of that, less of that. There's always less of something. When we talk about automation, there's always less. Everything costs less. Everything is less. Less humans, less machines, less everything. That's not true. It's always more of everything. It's always more of everything. Now the cost might be less, but it's always more. There's no point in having less if the cost is zero. You will only have more. Now that the question is, what is the value of that? That is a different question. It's an interesting question because if we think about the thing with O3, the model from OpenAI, what is a token worth to you, Lucas? It depends on what the output is. Exactly. Depends on what software, depends on which token, right? It all depends. So I think you need to have that in mind when you build companies. Like, I don't think that building companies has changed in any way. Building company is not about software. It's about something completely else. You need software sometimes. Sometimes you don't need software. But it's other things that make you successful. And just speaking about software and the amount of it and the value of it, it depreciates the actual things that you need to do in order to be successful. I think, people don't, and specifically people that are close to technology, don't think about that in that sense. Building companies entail much more than only a product and a software, I would say. So I'm actually very hopeful. I think it will be an amazing time, and value will be created tenfold the value that was created before for people like us and other people to accumulate, the world basically to accumulate. And I think that is a wonderful thing,
Do
I
you
can
also read
add something.
sci-fi, Alan? Oh, sorry.
I do, yeah. It was a couple of years ago now, but I've read a bunch of sci-fi. I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've seen all of the sci-fi movies, which I know you haven't. Yes. So here's the thing. Why are we interested in technology? Why are we interested in AI? It's only thanks to sci-fi, right? For us at least. And I wanted to add something. I think Ismail is touching on a lot of good points here. I want to add something about this all-knowing agent with the computer, because I've been thinking a lot about it since you first mentioned it, Lucas, in the chat. I had a couple of bad nights sleep. But, if we fast forward into the future and, we've been discussing a lot about, what is going to change. The models are going to get smarter. They're going to get cheaper, etc., etc. We all agree on all of these points. But let's look at, what are the things that are not going to change, right? One of those things is accountability, right? We're talking about these soft values that, us as technologists, we often overlook them, right? But the world is built on accountability. It's built on trust. It's built on managing risks between people and between companies, between governments, organizations, etc. The world is built like a net of those things. That's how things are run. I don't see that changing, and I don't see a model equipped with a computer changing that either. I don't think government will give up trust to this entity or companies. So there will always be other stakeholders, so to speak, human beings, companies, etc., in the loop. And so what is that really? If we translate it into our language, that's basically a network, right? So it's a network effect. And that is something the models can't touch. And we need to find ways of these two working together. So that's just one of the things that I see. And I don't see the model writing software overnight and overcoming that. In that case, we have the Skynet scenario again, right? So I think there's a lot of things to work on. And I think we have a responsibility to communicate that to other founders as well. Okay, we can tell them to give up on the vertical, stuff. We agree on that. Okay, we've deserved the right to say that, but there's still a lot of work to be done, right? And that's what we both are keeping busy with.
I think a good example is crypto. Crypto had this very libertarian aura when it first came out. It was peer-to-peer. I can send you money, you can send me money. It's perfect. There's no middleman. Now crypto, everything is a middleman. You can't even touch crypto without a middleman. And there are hundreds of middlemen in between, right? You have the exchanges, you have, the wallets, you have all of that stuff. That's how it works. But if we were in the beginning of crypto and I would tell you that, dude, the only thing that will happen is that there will be 10 more stock exchanges out there. And you would be, no, crypto, the whole premise of crypto is that it's going to be this and that, and it's going to be, deregulate, blah, blah, blah. World doesn't work that way.
Replace the financial system.
Doesn't work like that. Now it's like tightly connected to the financial system, and because that's the way humans are. It's just the way humans are.
And we are
Everything.
bullish, on both crypto and
Yeah.
this whole AGI thing.
Yeah.
So we are not
It's
Why
just
did
skeptics.
that? So to
Yeah.
be students of history, like why did that happen in crypto?
Why did that happen in crypto? Trust. Trust is something that is very, very strong when it comes to humans. That is the reason why you have Coinbase. It is not that me and you can't actually transact crypto, because we can. It's very easy, but we don't do it. We go through a trusted third party to do it. That is, even though crypto in itself should be that trusted, like Bitcoin would be that trusted third party in reality, but we don't trust software. So what we do instead is that we have a human being set up a company, build software, and then we push the money there, and then we get super regulated by the government. That's what we do. That's what everything is about, and it gives us, it makes the world work in the current system. Now, if the system would change, like radically change, in a way where it would be super decentralized, that might change as well, But currently, what we see in the world is not less regulation. It's more regulation. It's not becoming more decentralized. It's getting more centralized, even though we have technology. So I would even say that if you look at the technology curve and like how centralized the world has become, the more technology we have, the more centralized we become as human beings. And again, going back to sci-fi, all the sci-fi books, there's no countries. There's nothing. It's one central entity. There's always one central entity. It's either the Skynet, it's either the culture, it's some other thing, right? But it's central, a huge central apparatus that
The
manages
Borg
everything.
in
The
Star
Borg,
Trek.
if you will, right? So I think that these things are not as easy as one thinks, right? Self-driving cars is a good example. Cars can drive themselves. It's not a technology problem. You have them in SF, right? We took a self-driving car.
You don't know how many like Waymo people are standing behind and remote controlling it. You don't know that. But maybe a discussion for another day.
Sure, but we are of the belief that the model will solve it with enough compute, right? So the checkbox is green.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they solve it. You won't see self-driving cars in Sweden, as an example.
Yeah, true.
In 5 years, that won't happen because of regulation, because of humans, because
much
of
more than
networks.
5 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. It's not a technology problem. It's something else. It's a human problem that needs to get solved if we're going to go down that path.
So
and
what we are saying here is that we need to solve problems for humans rather than models, right? That's the kind of the conclusion we both have come to, Lucas, right? Because you're also serving humanity when you're working on AI safety, right?
Trying to. I'm not saying that this is not like the more beautiful vision. In a way it is. It's just like I'm concerned that there will be some kind of like race dynamic where when this is possible to just have a computer operated by an agent, there will be some people that do it responsibly, but they will be slower because of it, because they have to make sure that there's trust and humans are slow, and then the competition just ignores that and just go vroom, and there's like race dynamics that forces everyone to do the irresponsible thing. Maybe. But maybe regulation will solve that, or some AI safety thing that makes it so clear that if you do that, that's very, very harmful. I don't think there's anyone that do want to create a dystopia on Earth with AI. It's just race dynamics sometimes lead to it. The last thing I wanted to touch on is you're writing this blog on your website. Who are writing it, and or is it both of you?
I am responsible for clicking the publish button, but we collaborate. And what we do oftentimes is that we how it all started is that we oftentimes just sit down and talk about these things and nerd out. And after a while, we were thinking that we have so much content just getting lost in chats and in, over lunches, etc. So this was just, and today it's very easy to just capture a bit of that content and then get, a blog post. So we just started doing that, and the response has been great so far. There seems to be, and you know this as well, with your latest post, there's a large appetite for, I would say, opinion pieces when it comes to AI.
What do you feel like you get out of it?
So the visibility, of course, we have gotten a whole lot of signups for our waitlist as well from people who are interested in this kind of tools. But also it's a way for us to get our opinions across, because we are very opinionated people. And when you share your opinions with the world, I feel like you get rewarded oftentimes, because, you get people who agree, we get people who don't agree. And both of them I find equally satisfying. And if this was some other field that was progressing much more slowly, I'm not, what should I take? Thermodynamics. It's not so fun to talk about these things because, there's not much to learn. But here I feel like from week to week, there's so much to learn. So we want to be a part of that process.
Also, nothing good or nothing bad has ever been created by humans without a manifesto. Think about that. Everything good and everything bad has a manifesto. It's everything.
Which side do you want to be on?
I want to be on the good side, but I'm just saying that without a manifesto, I mean, you don't hear about that stuff that much. If you don't have a manifesto, basically, it will be hard, And I think it's good to align, we need to align internally regarding these things. Otherwise, it's very hard to work. And a good way of aligning is to write about it and discuss it, and then write about it and post it and share, get some feedback on it. That's a good way of aligning a vision for our company.
Right. So if people want to read your manifesto, where should they head?
They should head to superagent.sh.
There's some hesitation there. Don't you know your two-liner better than the
yeah,
the domain
name? I was
name.
wondering if I should just say the domain name or the full URL. But I was like, people can find it. It's one click away. Just go to the main site.
Hopefully the AI controlled computer can find it with one click.
Exactly. In worst case.
All right. Super nice chatting with you.
Awesome, Lucas. Thank you so much for having us. Keep us posted.
Of course. All right. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.